Hello. We're going to go into Jonah part 2. And to be honest, as I was reading over Jonah chapter 1, there were so many things in there that I think I missed yesterday. And so I just want to read some of the verses, and then as we go through the verses, we'll kind of talk about some of the things I think that Jonah is trying to teach us. So, in the very beginning, I just found out that Jonah's name means dove, and that he is, when it says Jonah 1, he is the son of Amittai, and then Amittai means faithful. So he's like the son of faithfulness, but yet, the whole book of Jonah shows that he is like the last one being faithful. And so here, in the beginning, it starts, Jonah ran away from the Lord and headed for Tarshish. He went down to Joppa. So in the first chapter, it shows Jonah just keeps going down. He goes down to Joppa, he goes down to the boat, and then when he gets on the boat, he goes down to the bottom of the boat, and then, when he gets swallowed by the whale, he goes down into the whale. But here he's going he's going on board and sailing for Tarshish. And then in verse 4 it says, "Then the Lord sent a great wind on the sea, and such a violent storm arose that the ship threatened to break up. All the sailors were afraid, and each cried out to his own God, and they threw the cargo into the sea to lighten the ship. But Jonah had gone down below deck, where he lay down and fell into a deep sleep." So here's the whole, this is a violent storm. This is a storm like the sailors had never seen before. And they're so desperate that they are all crying out to their own God. And yet here's Jonah, the faithful one, who's like fast asleep. I also think sometimes we as faithful ones. So here again, here's Jonah really telling us the story of ourselves. How many times have we been asleep? We go to church, and even in the middle of service, sometimes we just zone out, we zone in and out. Even in our everyday lives, we do things just kind of like on automatic, and we just aren't really fully present. And I see here again in Jonah, here's this thing going on. The circumstances are crazy, and these sailors are like fighting for their lives, and then here's Jonah just sleeping in a deep sleep. And then the captain, not just the other sailor, but the captain of the ship goes down and says to him, "How can you sleep? Get up and call on your God. Maybe he will take notice of us so that we will not perish." And then the captain cannot even believe that this one of the passengers is sleeping. So he's like, we're all calling out to our own gods. Can you just call out to your God? And so then the sailors said to each other, "Come, let us cast lots to find out who's responsible for this calamity." That's like, rolling dice, or like, rock, paper, scissors, to see like who's the one that's in fault here. And then, of course, it was Jonah. And then they said to him, "Tell us who's responsible for making all this trouble for us. What kind of work do you do? Where do you come from? What is your country? From what people are you?" So they're saying, who is this person that was asleep and who is now causing this trouble? What kind of work do you do? Where do you come from? Who are you? And why is this happening to us? And so here he says, "I am a Hebrew, and I worship the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the dry land." So he's saying with his mouth, "I am a Hebrew, I worship the Lord, and he is the God who made the sea and the dry land." But is he acting like that? He's just saying the words, but he's not really believing it. Was he worshiping the Lord during this time? And so then this terrified them, and they asked, "What have you done?" And then in parentheses, it says they knew he was running away from the Lord because he had already told them so. So I don't know when he told them, probably when he got on the ship, or maybe went right in the beginning. So all of these sailors are saying, "Oh my goodness, you must have done something bad, because your God is the one that made the heaven and sea, and you're running away from him." So now the sea was getting rougher and rougher, so they asked him, "What should we do to you to make the sea come down for us?" And instead, Jonah at this time could have said, "Lord, I am so sorry. Look what's happening to these people around me because of my sin, because I ran away from you. Just, can you save us? Can you help us? But no, you know what he says? He says, pick me up and throw me into the sea, and it will become calm. I know that it is my fault that this great storm has come upon you. So another lesson like that I see so clearly, which I didn't see, just reading it straight through, but is that, our sin, sometimes what we do to run away from God really causes circumstances and consequences to the people that we love or people just around us. That this person, this Jonah, because of his sin and what he's doing, running away, he's causing, almost death to other people that are innocent, that didn't do anything. And I often think of how alcoholics, when they're in their sin, they hurt so much of their family. Or sometimes we sometimes think as a people, that's my sin and it has nothing to do with you. And that's where we get the phrase like, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, because we just keep our sin, by ourselves. But that's just the wrong thinking, because every small decision that we make against God, can sometimes blow up into something like this. And here the sailors are like, no, we don't want to throw you into the storm. They said, no, we're going to try to row back to land. And then they said, but they could not, for the sea grew even wilder than before. And then they cried out to the Lord. So here these sailors that were just in this couple of sentences before crying out to their own God, now they're crying out to Yahweh, the Hebrew God, and they're asking the Lord, not Jonah, but the sailors are saying, please, Lord, do not let us die for taking this man's life. Do not hold us accountable for killing an innocent man, for you, Lord, have done as you please. So here are these people who do not know God, but yet now they're crying out to him. And then they took Jonah and threw him overboard, and the raging sea grew calm. At this, the men greatly feared the Lord, and they offered a sacrifice to the Lord and made vows to him. So this experience of, they met God. They met the Lord through this. And they saw God's work. They said, oh my goodness, your God is the one that changed the sea and calmed the sea for us. And now we want to worship you. And so they probably, when they landed, they probably went to the Hebrew temple, the Jewish temple, and they offered a sacrifice, and they even made vows. That means they were converted. And then, if this was the last sentence of the whole book, it says, now the Lord provided a huge fish to swallow Jonah, and Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. And then, let's say that was the end of the story. That would be pretty, that would be like the tragedy, right? That he was swallowed up and the story, but that's just the end of chapter 1. And so, a couple of things that really stand out is me as a person who's a pastor, who's considered a faithful one. But when even when I am not faithful, God sometimes can use those circumstances. First of all, my unfaithfulness can hurt so many others. But yet, even then, God can use that time to bring his people to him. These sailors, they saw the work of God and they acknowledged it and they worshiped him and they prayed to him. Whereas Jonah, the complete opposite, who was the faithful one, who was the prophet, never at this point still, repented or, some people say that he, maybe he was just trying to find a way out, or he knew that God would rescue him from the water. But you'll see later, he also says again, oh, just let me die. So this might be just another way of him just running away from God, because he's thinking, well, if I'm dead, I don't have to go to those evil people of Nineveh. So, again, it's Jonah is a book of the Bible, which most of God's word is. It's like a mirror held up to your face saying, you're judging Jonah? You look at yourself. So I think Jonah has a lot more insights about ourselves and showing us some of our own unfaithfulness and how God can really change us and change our direction and change our motivation. So again, I pray that you continue to read the book of Jonah and maybe share your insights with me as well. So have a good and godly day. And see you again.